bright on the outside, dark within, kind in words, sharp in tone, loving in intention, cold in reaction. We've all been there, saying things we didn't mean, blaming people who didn't deserve it, getting triggered by something that seemed harmless. And later we wonder, why did I react like that? Why did that hurt so much? Why did I lash out? Maybe it wasn't just about them. Maybe it was something in us, something we didn't want to see. Sometimes it's a coworker who constantly annoys you, the friend whose flaws you can spot instantly, the stranger who rubs you the wrong way for no clear reason. But here's the uncomfortable truth Jung discovered. What irritates us in others is often what we refuse to see in ourselves. This isn't about blame, it's about projection. One of Jung's most eye-opening and humbling ideas. That coworker you label as lazy might reflect your own hidden exhaustion. The partner you call too clingy could be showing you your own quiet longing for connection. Even that influencer you roll your eyes at for being vain might just be reflecting your own unspoken need to feel seen. We don't do this consciously. That's the thing. Projection isn't a decision, it's a defense. It's the mind's way of protecting us from what feels too uncomfortable to admit. The fears, the insecurity, the shame, the old wounds we've buried, they don't stay buried. They slip into how we see the world, and the people around us become mirrors, showing us what we're not ready to face. Today, we're not just talking about psychology, we're talking about relationships, healing, self-awareness, and what it truly means to stop pointing fingers and start looking inward. Welcome to Mantis Library. This is where we explore the places we hide from ourselves and why that's where the real work begins. So let's talk about why that person who irritates you might actually be your greatest teacher. You know the one. Maybe it's your coworker who never stops talking, your critical mother-in-law, or that reckless friend who makes you cringe. Here's the uncomfortable truth. What bothers us most in others is often what we haven't made peace with in ourselves. That's projection, the psychological phenomenon where we unconsciously cast our own disowned qualities onto other people. As Carl Jung said it, we are convinced that certain people have all the bad qualities we do not know in ourselves. Think about the last time you instantly disliked someone. That knee-jerk reaction. It's often less about them and more about what they're mirroring back to you that you don't want to see. This all starts with what Jung called the shadow, the parts of ourselves we've shoved into the psychological basement because they don't fit our self-image. Maybe you pride yourself on being easygoing, so your temper gets repressed, or you see yourself as selfless, so your needs go unspoken. How can anyone see straight when he does not even see himself and the darkness he unconsciously carries with him into all his dealings? Jung asked. That darkness isn't evil, it's just the rejected parts of your humanity. And the more you deny these traits in yourself, the more you'll spot them and hate them in others. The perfectionist who loathes lazy people, the people pleaser who judges selfish friends, the workaholic who scoffs at unambitious colleagues. What we condemn in others often points directly to what we've exiled in ourselves. Let's make this painfully practical. Remember that time you blew up at your partner for being irresponsible with money? Could it be you resent your own financial fears being mirrored back? Or when you mocked an acquaintance for being attention-seeking? Might that sting because you secretly craved recognition too? Even positive projections work this way. When we idolize someone, we're often seeing our own untapped potential reflected back. The key is catching these moments when your reaction feels disproportionate. As Jung noted, all gaps in our knowledge are filled with projections. When someone triggers you, pause and ask, what if this is showing me something I've refused to acknowledge about myself? That coworker who micromanages. Maybe you dislike seeing your own control issues reflected. The friend who's always late. Perhaps you resent how much you overextend yourself by always being early. The real trouble begins when we mistake our projections for truth. That boss you're convinced is out to get you. The ex who never understood you. The neighbor who's so fake. While sometimes people genuinely behave poorly, often we're seeing them through the lens of our own unfinished business. This explains why two people can have completely different experiences of the same person. One finds them inspiring, another finds them insufferable. As Jung wryly observed, every individual needs revolution, inner division, deliverance from his, her own self-formed prison. Our projections build that prison. They lock us into seeing the world through the narrow window of our own denied self. Here's the life-changing part. Every irritation is an invitation to self-awareness. That judgmental thought about someone else, it's a flashing arrow pointing to your own shadow material. The qualities you admire excessively in others, clues to your own dormant gifts. This isn't about blaming yourself for every negative reaction. It's about using those reactions as a mirror. Next time someone really gets under your skin, try this. 1. Notice your strong emotional response. 2. Ask, what does this say about what I value or fear? 3. Consider, how might this trait exist in me, even in small ways? The goal isn't to excuse bad behavior in others, but to stop giving away your power by believing everyone else is the problem. What makes projections so insidious is how utterly convinced we are that we see others objectively. The psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate, Jung warned. In other words, what we don't own inside will encounter as conflict outside. The controlling parent who raised you might be gone from your life, but if you haven't faced how that shaped you, you'll be attracting or imagining controlling figures everywhere. This is why relationships often feel like Groundhog Day. We keep replaying the same dynamics until we do the inner work. Here comes another important piece of the puzzle: psychological catfishing. And no, we're not talking about someone pretending to be a hot model online while secretly living in their mom's basement. This is a deeper, sneakier kind of catfishing, where your own mind tricks you into believing something about the world that's not really there. The thing is, projection doesn't just mess with your personal relationships. It shapes the way you see everything. Politics, religion, your favorite celebrity's problematic interview from 2012. Even the way you interpret art. It's like putting on a filter and forgetting you're wearing one. Jung called this the tendency to make unconscious contents conscious in projected form. Basically, our brain gets lazy, so it just paints the outside world with whatever mess we haven't sorted out on the inside. Think about it. Why do two people watch the same political debate and come out screaming two completely different truths? One person sees a hero, and the other sees a manipulative villain. Same words, same suit, same teleprompter. What's the difference? The internal landscape. When you haven't faced your own biases, wounds, and insecurities, those things sneak into how you view others, and suddenly your truth is more about you than it is about reality. Jung once said, "The psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, It happens outside as fate. So, that spat you got into on X, that might not be fate. That might be your unresolved mommy issues making a surprise appearance at 3 a.m. in your replies. Social media especially is like projection on steroids. You see a post, get irrationally angry, and decide that the person must be awful. But what if they just said something that poked a bruise you haven't looked at in years? A weird truth is, people who trigger us most are usually holding up a mirror. The influencer you think is so full of themselves might just reflect your own fear of being seen. The guy ranting in the comments about weak people needing therapy might be terrified of his own emotional vulnerability. Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." In other words, before you cancel someone, maybe pause and ask, what button did they just press inside me, and who put that button there? And while we're here, let's talk about those enemies of yours. You know, the ones who ruined your life by being arrogant, selfish, passive-aggressive, manipulative. Pick your poison. Jung would say they're showing you something you disowned in yourself. Not that you're exactly like them, but that some part of you, maybe your assertiveness, your ambition, your selfishness, is buried deep and unloved. So instead of owning it, you see it out there in someone else and attack it. Because it's easier to say they're the problem than to say, that reminds me of me. It's like blaming the mirror for your messy hair. But here's the kicker. Those enemies might be doing you a favor. They're giving you a cheat code to your own inner world. Now, let's be real. Relationships are the projection Olympics, especially the romantic ones. Ever fallen for someone and thought, wow, they're perfect, only to find out a few months later that, nope, they're just a person with flaws and a loud chewing habit. What happened there was projection. You didn't fall for them. You fell for the story you told yourself about them. You saw their confidence and called it kindness. Their silence became mystery. Their instability looked like passion. You weren't dating a person. You were dating your unmet needs and fantasies. Jung explained, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But if you're only reacting to a fantasy, you won't transform. You'll just repeat the same cycle with a different face. And then there's mass projection. When entire groups project their fears onto another group, things get dark. History is full of examples. Witch hunts weren't about witches. They were about fear. Fear of women, fear of sexuality, fear of power. Cancel culture often works the same way. Sometimes it's accountability, yes, but other times it's projection. One group screams evil because they're avoiding their own discomfort. Jung warned us about this decades ago. We are still swamped with projected illusions. That was before the internet. Imagine what he'd say now. Probably something like, get off Instagram and go to therapy. But here's the good news. Projection isn't a life sentence. You can take your projections back. Jung called this the withdrawal of projections. And it's like pulling your own unconscious threads out of the world around you. It's not fun. It kind of sucks, honestly. It means admitting that maybe the person you hate most isn't the villain. You've just assigned them the role. It means seeing your own jealousy, insecurity, or arrogance instead of blaming others for it. But once you start doing this, things get clearer. Relationships become less chaotic. You stop expecting your partner to read your mind. You stop demanding perfection from people. You realize the drama is mostly happening in your head. One way to catch yourself projecting is by watching your triggers. If someone makes you irrationally angry or overly obsessed, pause. Ask yourself, What does this situation remind me of? Is there a pattern here? Another trick is journaling. Not just your feelings, but your assumptions. Write down what you think someone's doing or feeling. Then ask, do I know this or am I guessing? Therapy helps too, especially the kind that makes you squirm. If your therapist is agreeing with you all the time, you might need a new one. Now here's the twist. This whole conversation might be a projection too. Maybe you're seeing yourself in these words. Maybe you're nodding because something deep inside just said, wait a minute, I do this. Or maybe you're resisting it, thinking this is about my ex, not me, which is exactly how projection works. It hides in plain sight. Even Jung himself wasn't immune. He said, I am not what happened to me, I am what I chose to become. That's not just inspirational, it's a reminder that we don't have to stay trapped in the roles our projections assign us. And when we finally start owning the parts we've banished, when we admit, yes, I can be jealous, or I do have a superiority complex, or maybe I use sarcasm to hide fear, something amazing happens. We get our power back. Instead of being dragged around by our unconscious mind, we begin to drive. We stop judging people so quickly. We become a little softer, a little wiser. We see others more clearly because we've started seeing ourselves. But Jung left us with a warning. We must still be exceedingly careful not to project our own shadows too shamelessly, for the possession of a shadow is a peculiarity of man. Translation: being human means having a shadow, but it also means having a choice. So the next time you find yourself pointing a finger at someone, maybe turn it into a mirror. Because the truth is, some people you're running from might just be trying to introduce you to yourself. And if you liked this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay curious, stay mindful, and never stop exploring. We'll see you again in Mantis Library.